At some point, after I'd been reporting out all these various threads of David's story, interviewing lots of people at length about David and about what he did and the consequences of what he did, this children's book I used to read to my kids popped into my head. It's called Zoom. There are no words, it's just pictures, and it starts with these pointy red shapes. And then, next page, you realize those shapes are a rooster's comb. Next page, you zoom out, you see the rooster is standing on a fence with two little kids watching him. Next page, zoom out again, they're in a farmhouse. And then, zoom further, you realize that all of it, the rooster, the kids, the farmhouse, are toys being played with by another child, and that whole scene is actually an ad in a magazine, and the magazine is in the lap of Jeremy Thorner napping through a seminar, and so on. Out and out it zooms, the aperture of the thing getting wider and wider until the original image is so far away it's unseeable. That's what the story of David McClary is like. This one idiosyncratic guy makes a radical decision at the age of 29 to walk away to Genentech. And the consequences of that decision, they spin out wider and wider. And at every turn, you're surprised. The picture changes. To get the full picture, you need to go very, very small, into one person's life, and also very, very big, into the war to save public research. So let's start at the beginning. Why'd he do it? Why'd David leave MCB?
I can tell you the story.
Give me the 30-second version first.
This is from Mark's first taped phone call with David.
30-second version. You know what Dust 1 is, right?
What is?
Dust 1, the radio signal.
Dust 1 stands for Duty, Status, Whereabouts Unknown. It's MCV's version of Man Overboard. David says what he was trying to do was to cause a Dust 1, which already sets him apart, because it means David doesn't fit into any of the AWOL or desertion scenarios we're used to hearing. He wasn't cavorting, he wasn't drunk or goofing off. He didn't drop his pipette and flee in the middle of an experiment. He didn't decide in a burst of panic or confusion to get a job as a bartender. Instead, slow simmering and methodical, David formulated a plan. He would create a crisis, a Dust 1, in order to call attention to another crisis. David says he had serious concerns that began back during rotations and which persisted throughout his time in MCB, regarding drastic cuts in public funding for basic research.
Now, as a graduate student, nobody's going to listen to me.
Of course.
Nobody's going to take me serious if I say students, staff, and faculty need to withhold their labor until adequate funding for basic research is restored.
Right.
At the time, David was at a tiny outpost known as OP Rhine. Rhine was in Stanley Hall in eastern Berkeley, right near the campus border.
It was 5 bays surrounded by drywall, crammed up in a little hallway. So it gave me the willies just seeing the place.
That's a guy named Brett Robeson. He never even went to OP Rhine, but walking by it was enough to take in the bleakness. Like other graduate students I talked to, Katie Sieverman remembered OP Rhine mostly for what it lacked: a bioruptor, a typhoon scanner, a nanodrop.
Everybody pretty much got some sort of contaminant while we were out there, just because we couldn't keep things clean enough. We didn't have the resources.
But what was the dirt? Just dust and...
Dust, flies,
Oh, flies, yeah.
Flies, definitely. Damn Eisen lab. Plus the open toilets, the burn pit.
The burn pit, which we call the pit of hell.
This is Gavin Schlissel, who was a friend of David's at the time, same lab. The pit of hell was this large hole they dug, and they'd throw the trash in there and burn it.
We called it the pit of hell because we started it and it never went out. It just burned continuously through the nights and days.
Did you have to make your own, media, for lack of a better word?
Yes, you did that right next to the pit of hell, so it was all connected. They took an empty HESCO. A HESCO is like a large basket that you fill with dirt.
Uh-huh.
Like, 8 feet tall kind of thing. Took an empty one of those, and you had the little bucket that you put glucose in. Then pull it out, mix that with some yeast peptone, and it was someone's job to stand there with a stick and stir it while it burned.
No.
As you're stirring it, sometimes, if you didn't have a metal rod, a wooden, a large wooden stick, like a 1x1, your stick would eventually burn down, and it just starts getting closer and closer as you're stirring it.
Whose job would it be to do the stirring? Like, did you have to draw straws for the stirring, or did you just take turns?
Between the rotons. The postdocs would usually pick one of them, and usually you could rely on them picking the roton they don't like.
Didn't you have stir plates?
Well, we had one that sometimes worked, but our PI would only let us run the electricity for about 15 minutes a day to cut down on overhead. At least we weren't an LSA.
The OP Rhine was about 15 minutes up the hill from the new LKS building. So David's idea was that he'd sneak away from OP Rhine and run all the way to LKS. Here's David again.
A man disappears from an MCB lab, and a few daters after Dust 1 is called up, he reappears at another lab? Suddenly, because of the Dust 1, everybody is alerted. CIA is alerted, the Navy is alerted, the Marines are alerted, Air Force is alerted, the NIH is alerted, not just MCB.
Which means that when he reappears, it'll be such a big deal. There'll be such a commotion. Everyone will want to know why he left and why he's back. And so he'll be able to get an audience with whomever he wants, Robert Tejan even, and they won't be able to ignore his complaints.
So gutsy move, dude.
Gutsy, but still stupid.
Well, yeah. That's not mutually exclusive.
No.
On the morning of June 30th, 2009, David had been scheduled to show up to a lab meeting with the rest of the Rhine lab. His fellow lab members waited anxiously to begin. Still no David. David's fellow lab mates immediately tried to piece together what had happened. Some of these people, they'd seen so many strange and terrible things in lab, but this was unheard of. I talked to Katie and Ryan, and another Ryan, and a guy I'm calling Scott. It's not his real name. And Jean and Aisha and Anne and Gavin and Crippa and Davis and Daniel and Jasper. They remember David differently, but to a person, they said they were gobsmacked when they heard someone was missing.
And I was like, this has got to be a drill.
Like, holy crap, like, is this a dream? I was like, what? Like, what? It's just the craziest thing that could ever happen.
Because it was so ludicrous at the time to think about it. Like, what do you mean?
Because nobody walks off. Nobody skips the lab meeting.
Where are you gonna go? I mean, it's not like you can go hide out, at the mall or something.